Welcome to Ladies Talking Love, Season 2, Episode 19. Do I need a lubricant? It's Ladies Talking Love, a community of women uncovering more joy and fulfillment in sex as we learn from experts and amazing women like you. Together, let's create a world where women's sexuality is celebrated and understood, beginning with our own. I'm your host, Ariel Finlinson. Let's talk love. I don't know about you guys, but I honestly have been so uneducated about lubricant. And in my early days of marriage, it was just the Walgreens, whatever that I was given. And then I never really got more because, after applying, I had this super sticky hand that I was like, I don't even know what to do with this. And so it was so annoying. I just didn't want to use lube because I could do without it. But this was such a helpful episode for me to learn more about lube and why it can be good to use, and the two basic types of lube that Dani recommends that pretty much everyone has on hand for different types of occasions. I hope that it's helpful for you. I really hope that all of these episodes bring up some great conversations with you and your partner. And if you don't agree with everything in any of my episodes, I am totally fine with that. I really hope that every episode just gives you a great chance to spark conversations, figure out what you guys are going to do to improve your sexual relationship, even if it looks different than anything we talk about on here. I just hope it will spark the type of conversations that will give you the boost that you need. Dani Todd has been a sexual coach for women since 2015. She is a passionate advocate for women's sexual health, and as a member of a conservative religious community, she especially thrives on helping women rewrite their personal stories about sex. Dani is a mother of 4 and has been married for 13 years to her best friend, Tyson. Together, they enjoy road trips, DIYing their home, and of course, making love, which I hope all of us are enjoying more after listening to this podcast. Before jumping in, I just wanted to let you know about something super exciting that I've been working on for the past several months. If you want to improve your sex life and create more intimacy in your marriage, you are in the right place because the Dating Divas Sex Seminar is now live. I've teamed up with 23 sex and marriage experts to take your sex life to the next level of intimacy and fun you've been waiting for. And the best part, you don't even have to leave your house. Using my link, you will have access to 23 presentations covering sex questions that you've been too afraid to ask. You'll hear topics from sexy date ideas to sexual mindfulness and everything in between. All listeners of this podcast can get access to all of the 2022 Sex Seminar goodness for only $20. Or if you're ready for even more, using my link, you can receive access to all of the 2020, 2021, and 2022 sex seminars in a discounted bundle. Click on the link in the show notes to check it out. But without further ado, let's talk love. I'm so excited to welcome Dani Todd onto Ladies Talking Love today. Thanks for joining me, Dani.
You are so welcome. I'm excited to be here.
And we're going to talk all about lube. So let's just jump in. Can you tell us a little bit, Dani, first of all, how you got so into learning about lube and lubricants?
It's one of those things you don't grow up aspiring to be necessarily, like a lube expert. And I wouldn't necessarily call myself a lube expert, but I definitely have some experience under my belt. I have just always had a passion for the intimate realm, especially in a conservative religious community where so many of these things can be so shameful. It's always been something I've been curious by and comfortable talking about. But it's interesting as the years have gone by, with the experience I've had coaching women, how something as simple as lubricant can literally change the entire game for them. And I've come to know for myself and through their experiences, really how a minimal investment can bring huge changes. And so I love talking about it. I think it's something everybody needs to understand. It's something more sophisticated than just going to Walgreens and grabbing a bottle of lube. There are lots of different options, and understanding them can also make a huge difference. So I love talking about lube.
I'm so glad, because this is a topic that I don't know as much about as I would like to. So I'm excited to learn from you.
Yes. Well, first of all, let me just tell you, okay, something you need to understand. There's so much information about lubricant, right? Just like anything, there's always going to be opposing opinions and experiences about it. You can get on the internet and you're going to find one article that says this and another article that says this. Everything I'm going to share in this podcast comes from other reputable podcasts or various sexual wellness books or articles. The Patty Brisbane Foundation for Women's Sexual Health, which is actually the only foundation for women's sexual health in the nation, and just basic experiences I've had while coaching hundreds of women through the last 6 years. So although there are many great products on the market, I will probably specifically mention some lubricants produced by a company called Pure Romance, which works hand in hand with the Patty Brisbane Foundation. And I found them to provide the best results and experience.
So awesome. Can you start off by just kind of telling us what is lube?
It's a liquid used during sex to make the vulva, vagina, or anal area wetter. I mean, that's as simple as that, right? Just like a vehicle uses lube to make things work better and to make things glide. That's the purpose of lube.
Make it all run a little smoother.
Yes. Yes.
So why do people choose to use lube?
Because it makes things feel better, right? A well-oiled machine always works better and feels better than a dry machine. Also, it can help things smell better. It can make things taste better if that's your thing, which I think also begs the question, so why don't people use lube, right? And in my experiences, I would say there are two commonalities. The first is a lot of women actually think something is wrong with them if they have to use lube. Like I said, there's almost a shame behind it. Like if I have to reach for something to help me be more comfortable, something is wrong with me. Or their partners feel that way. And they're like, we don't need this, right? It just needs to be natural. But that's like saying, if your skin is dry, don't use lotion. Something's wrong with you if your skin is dry, just leave it dry. We really need to normalize that lubricant is totally normal. In fact, most women do need it because, I mean, we'll talk through this episode about things that dry you out that you might not even realize. And so just normalizing it, I think, is a huge thing because so many people think that it's abnormal, that they shouldn't need it. But also another thing that people sometimes feel they don't need it because they're wet enough. And there are some people who are that way, but they're definitely rare. Most people, even when they feel like, I don't need lube, things work just fine. I've seen those people come and grab one of these Pure Romance lubricants specifically, and they have sensations that they never had before because it just takes so much stress off the body. And so people use it to make it more comfortable, to make it smell better, to feel better, to work better. And even skeptics have found those things to be true, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And I love that too. Like if most women could benefit from using lube, maybe that's something we should all try. And Dani helped me with that because I am one of those women who is extremely wet. And I haven't noticed a huge difference, but it's been nice to notice like sometimes there would be rubbing in areas where I didn't self lubricate as well.
Yes.
And just putting that little extra has helped, but I am really wet most of the time. So I haven't noticed a ton, but it is nice to know like, oh, if I just put a little bit on, that's going to help with some of the coarse rubbing that can occur occasionally for me.
Yeah. And I think we would all agree those moments take us by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
You might not expect them, but it might be that time of the month, or you might not be as hydrated that day, or what have you. Especially women's bodies are pretty complex. And just knowing that you have something that you can lean on, because chances are you're going to have days when you need it. It's so important. Every woman has one.
I started a new medication several months ago, and I noticed that in recent months, sometimes I was a little more dry than I had been for the past, however long. And so it was nice that this conversation happened around that time. So I could be like, oh, perfect.
Yeah. And prescription drugs, medications are one of the biggest killers of our self-lubricating properties. So I love that now you have it on hand.
Yes, I know.
Save your life. Ariel,
Thank you.
I love it.
I'm so glad. So what are some things that you wish everyone knew about lube? I'm sure we've covered a little bit of that in this conversation, but what are some of those top things?
There are 3, and it's amazing the difference that these 3 little facts can make. So take note, ladies, okay? Did you know that 80% of women who have a hard time orgasming, maybe they've never orgasmed, won't have a problem when they're using a quality lubricant? Okay. 80% of women. I've seen that over the last 6 years. People come to me married for a decade. I mean, married 10 or more years saying, I've never had an orgasm. And these are women who are desperate, who would be willing, frankly, to probably drop hundreds of dollars on anything that I could prescribe and tell them would fix their problem. My first question always with that issue is, are you using a lubricant? 9 out of 10 times their answer is no. And the 1 out of 10 times when they say yes, I ask what the lubricant is, and they're using a crappy Walgreens, Walmart type lubricant, right? So having a good lubricant really does change the game in the world of orgasm. So don't forget that.
And are you talking intercourse or all things?
Outer course,
intercourse, manual stimulation, all the things. Just having that lubricant can make it not chafe or rub as uncomfortable.
Friction is a killer of dreams. Like, and even if it's very minimal, I mean, even just by fingers, finger play, things like that, when it has enough glide that it can move without stressing the skin or stressing whatever area you're dealing with, yeah, the whole world shifts. So yes, whether it's intercourse, outer course, toys, fingers, what have you, lubricant can change the game.
And I just wanted to throw that out because that's something that I'm just like, we need to stress so much. It's not just about intercourse, which I know you're all on board. But just sometimes when I hear these things, even me who educate about this and think about it, automatically I think intercourse. Oh, if I'm having intercourse versus no, this is like so much broader.
And that's totally the stigma of our society, right? It's totally that stigma. When we think sex, we automatically think intercourse, but women, we've got a lot of outer course capacity.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. And that's where it's at.
I've worked with women who have orgasms by the skin on your elbow. If that's a pleasurable place for you, it doesn't have to be internal. It can be anywhere because our minds are our most powerful organ.
Nipples, breasts, toes, thighs,
yes. Yes.
Okay. So the first point, lubricant for orgasm.
Yes. If you're having a hard time, look at your lubricant. That's something to think about. The second thing, your vaginal pH. Okay. We talk about pH balance. Your vaginal pH is very fragile, very delicate. And chances are anything that penetrates a penis, a toy, fingers, what have you, it's not going to be on that pH balance, which throws it off balance, which results in maybe stinging sensations during intercourse, after intercourse. Things don't smell as fresh. You know, your pH, your vagina does know everything it needs to do, and it's got good bacteria and it cleans itself. It takes care of itself. When you upset that in any way, things get uncomfortable, things don't smell fresh, and all of those things happen. So a good quality lubricant, especially one that is pH balanced, is going to keep everything happy. It basically creates a barrier to keep things right where they need to be. The third thing that we don't realize, speaking about men partners specifically, penises don't create moisture. They actually absorb it like a sponge. So within 3 to 5 minutes after penetration with intercourse, their penis has absorbed most, if not everything, you have naturally produced. So if you're lasting longer than 3 to 5 minutes, which you probably hope you are, if you're not properly lubricated, it starts to create friction. And many of us have been there. It's dry. It's a little sandpapery, right?
Yep.
But I want you to do this. Lick the inside of your cheek. That tissue inside your cheek is a very delicate tissue. That's going to be similar to the tissue you're dealing with on your vaginal walls. Can you imagine if your mouth was dry, you have no saliva to lubricate your mouth, and you just sat and raked something back and forth against your cheek? That's not going to feel very good. And what's happening is actually micro tears in those vaginal walls with that friction, which also is not comfortable. Those little tears become cozy homes for bacteria. You might end up with UTIs and other types of infections that keep resurfacing, right? And over time, especially, this is something good to know for us. I mean, we're younger, right? Like, we need to know right now that our vaginal walls need to be cared for now, because over time, if they're not cared for, those little tears become scar tissue.
Mm.
And I've had women come to me in their later years because of the scarring. Their vaginal walls cannot expand and contract like they used to.
Mm.
And think about scar tissue. Scar tissue doesn't have sensations. So oftentimes people look at lubricant like it's meant just to make things more comfortable tonight. In this moment, I want it to feel good, but you've got to look at it as an intimate longevity. Your vaginal care, it's really truly a vaginal wellness thing. Just like you take care of your skin, just like you take care of your face, your vaginal walls are just important. You only get one vagina. They don't donate those. You need to make
You
sure
need to take care of it.
you take care of them. So those are the three things, just to recap. They help with pleasure and the vaginal pH, keeping it balanced. And the last thing is making sure that they're well hydrated and moisturized so that you can enjoy intercourse and other fun well into the future.
You've taught us so much just about those things. So this leads right into the next question of how do you choose a lube with so many options out there? How do you find the lube that's right for you and that is good at keeping your pH healthy and all these types of things?
Yes. I mean, there are so many lubricants. To keep it simple, okay, I'm going to cover the bases of two of what I would consider your staple lubricants that really, truly every woman has purpose for these two. Look at it like shoes, right? Women like shoes. You probably have at least two different kinds of shoes, probably many more.
Yep.
But we're looking at this like maybe your brown shoes and your black shoes. Even if you're a simple shoe person, I'm willing to bet you probably at least have those two, because your situations are different, your moods are different. So the two staples that I recommend every woman have are a water-based lubricant and a silicone-based lubricant. So what are their differences? Water-based is just what it says. If it's water-based, it's going to require some moisture to work. If you're using a good water-based lubricant, it's going to be very skin to skin type sensation. Okay, it's going to feel more natural. It's going to be very mild, very non-intrusive. The one that I love to recommend is Just Like Me by Pure Romance. I've seen maybe like a doula, women who interact with the self lubricant of women. This Just Like Me is just like you. It is just like the natural moisture you produce. And it's going to feel very skin to skin, but it's going to give you all the benefits of a good lubricant. It also has a re-wetting capability, which means you can put it on ahead of time. If you know you're going on a date, you know it's your anniversary, it's your birthday. For some reason, if you know you're going to be intimate, you can actually apply this Just Like Me lubricant. And when that moment happens, it can be as spontaneous as you want it to, because your natural moisture brings it back to life.
That's cool. Is there a time limit of like how long it will last?
No, really. Like I've had some people who will put it on earlier in the day and they'll go to work or run their errands or clean their house. And what happens is it just absorbs into the vaginal tissue. But when your natural moisture comes to life, when you're aroused, it brings the lubricant back to life, which is super cool.
That's really cool.
Yes. So water-based is just a really easy, mild go-to. The silicone-based is going to be helpful if you are somebody who is more on the dry side. And even if you're not always dry, you're going to have those moments because of prescriptions or that time of the month, or you're dehydrated, drinking alcohol, excessive exercise, all sorts of things like that will dry you out. Even medicine that stops your nose from running during flu season or allergy season actually stops your vagina from producing moisture as well. Okay. Medicines like that are meant to dry you out. So consider that in dry moments or water play. Water-based lubricant will not work in the water. The water will just wash it away. But the silicone repels water and makes water play possible. Someone who is always dry, a water-based lubricant will never work. It's going to absorb into their tissue and they'll never see it again. It won't come back. So some cases there are people who only use the silicone. Many cases they have both because it depends on the mood or depends on the situation. Those are like base lubricant 101, everyone needs one of those types. But then, I mean, if you look out in the market, there's all sorts of fun ones that bring in some novelty and flavors and all those sorts of things. I could talk about those things all day, but we're here to talk about the necessities because every woman needs a lubricant. So I would recommend either water-based or silicone, or optimally both.
We might have to do a follow-up.
Yeah.
And that is so helpful, just to have those like wet, dry, what you're thinking about. Like, that's so helpful to just have those main two to start with, to start thinking about if you haven't tried one, or even if you have, like, oh,
that makes
that's
sense.
why I'm not getting lubricated. I have a water-based lubricant and I'm dry. So that's so helpful.
Exactly. Because there are some, I don't remember the name of it, but I've had a couple people come to me in the last several years. There are medical conditions that actually keep women from lubricating, you know? And so some of those women coming to me, I've been married 8 years and I've never had an orgasm. I always ask that question, right? What lubricant are you using? And to find out that some of these women, literally, they have health conditions where they do not produce self lubrication. No wonder their water base doesn't work. So those little aha moments, yeah, those are the things that help.
So awesome. And really quickly, I wanted to cover just like 3 common questions about lubricant that I've heard come up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And every time I go get a wedding bag ready, I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. Which type of lubricant is safe to use with condoms? That's one of the ones I always have to Google. Can you tell us?
Yes, most people are gifting KY jelly for brides, and KY jelly is not safe with condoms. I would recommend never using KY jelly, actually, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So yes, for someone who is using condoms as a contraception, researching their lubricant to make sure it's safe is important. I can't necessarily make a list of the ones that are okay, but I do know the one that I've mentioned, the Just Like Me by Pure Romance, it actually is FDA cleared, safe for condoms. You will rarely see FDA clearance for sexual intimate products. So it's kind of a big deal. Going to give you all those benefits that I mentioned. And on top of that, it is FDA cleared for condoms. So very important if condoms are your source of contraception, because if it's not safe for condoms, it will break it and you may have a honeymoon baby.
What do you do if you're dry though and you use condoms? Are there silicone based that are okay, or does it have to be water based?
That's a good question. And I cannot direct you to a silicone one that would be safe for condoms. If anything, I would maybe say just use a little extra of the water based and it would probably be okay if you're really wanting to make sure you don't jeopardize the condom.
And what about while you're trying to get pregnant? Because I've heard some people talk about how they were using a type of lube and they didn't realize that it actually hurt sperm, which was so frustrating.
Especially when you're trying to get pregnant, which can be so stressful. This is a very interesting question, and I get it often. And I can tell you there's no conclusive answer. The one thing for sure is be sure your lubricant does not have spermicide. Spermicide kills sperm. That's the point. And there are lubricants that do that. It's an extra contraception for people who are interested in that. That is the only like streamlined, absolutely always going to not help you get pregnant is spermicide. But otherwise, I've seen so many doctors have different opinions. I've seen some people get pregnant using water-based. Some people get pregnant using silicone. I had 4 babies within 5 years and I always lubricated and I went between the two, you know what I mean? And so if you have a doctor that you really trust, talk to them, see what they say. And if it feels good to you, go with that. But as our purposes are concerned on this podcast, I cannot give you a conclusive answer because I've never seen it.
Yeah, no, which is so good to know. What about with toys? What type of lubricant is recommended for use with toys?
Okay, this is another great question. And it's long been understood that you should not use silicone lubricant with toys, which is mostly true because the chemical reaction of silicone with silicone is a bind. Silicone binds to silicone, which is why toys melt together when they're stored together. They melt together like gummy bears. The same bind can happen with silicone toys and silicone lubricant. The silicone lubricant will actually break down the toy. But the quality of the toy also determines the lubricant that can be used with it. So for example, Pure Romance bedroom accessories are made from a high grade food grade silicone, which is very, very high quality. And Pure Romance's Pure Pleasure, the silicone lubricant, which I've mentioned, has actually been tested safe with their silicone toys. So going back to what you just mentioned, you know, for somebody who is on the dry side and water-based is not enough for them, the good news is you do have an option for a silicone lubricant to be used with silicone toys. You would be safe with Pure Pleasure and any of the Pure Romance silicone toys. But with that being said, there are a lot of toys on the market, right? And we can't change chemistry. Silicone binds with silicone. So it's not just the silicone, it's the quality of the toy. And so if you want to be sure that things are going to be used well, just do a little bit of research and see what the makeup of the lubricant and the toy are to decide how they will interact together. Because yes, most of the time silicone should not marry with silicone. And water-based is always going to be an easy answer.
Yeah.
So,
and the recommended one that will work with silicone toys. But no, that's so good
yes,
to know that there are some that have been shown like, nope, you can use silicone with it.
So basically, water-based is always okay. If water-based is not enough for you, you do have the option if you're using really good high quality.
Yeah, no. And what about lubricants that you would recommend people should avoid?
So I love this question because, oh, the things I've heard people use. And crazy, the things that I've heard some doctors recommend. I've had some people, their doctors recommend use Crisco. Why would somebody use Crisco? So again, you need to make sure that you have a doctor you trust. So something that is common is spit. Spit is fast, it's easy, it's always there, it's always easily accessible. But just keep in mind, as I mentioned, you only get one vagina. Make sure you're taking care of it. Spit is likely going to introduce bacteria and other things that might not be so welcome vaginally. And it's easy for men to be like, it's okay, because everything they have is on the outside and it's easy for them to go wash and clean off. So anything that interacts with their sensitive areas usually doesn't linger.
They can clean off.
Yeah, exactly. With a wipe or a towel or a shower, it's trickier for us. So just be mindful that anything that's going inside is likely going to reside there for long enough that it could make things unhappy. So spit, I would avoid it. KY jelly, I mentioned. I listened to a podcast and I've listened to so many. I wish I could tell you which one. I wish I could cite it, but it was a lubricant 101 type of podcast. And the two lubricants that they specifically said to avoid are KY jelly and Astroglide, which are probably some of the most popular because they're cheap and they're easy to get your hands on. But they have ingredients that actually cause your mucous membranes to burst. So the parts of your body that are made to produce lubricant, those lubricants actually damage and burst them, which dries you out, which makes you need more lubricant. And they're squishy and messy and they make noises.
Sticky,
all those things. So highly recommend no more KY jelly, no more Astroglide. Then I would say the most common one, and this is one I tread lightly on because I know we live in a world where people are very mindful of ingredients. They want to be natural, right? Because of that, a lot of people use coconut oil. But I just want to bring you to pause and just consider something, because coconut oil has antibacterial properties. You know, it's one of the properties people love coconut oil so much for. Your vagina has good bacteria. Like I mentioned earlier, it's got everything it needs to flush itself, to keep it clean, to keep things comfortable and keep things working. To introduce something like coconut oil that's antibacterial, it doesn't identify which bacteria to kill and which not to kill. It can't identify which is good and which is bad, which means it's going to be killing it all, which can potentially cause more problems. So consider that. And also just keep in mind, anything that's food-based, again, it's likely going to linger. And anything that's food-based has a point that it can become rancid, a point that it can get rotten. And your vaginal walls are pleated which give them the ability to open, and then anything left behind ends up closing and left there. I don't think I need to say any more. Just consider that, okay? Anything that's left behind has the likelihood of going bad, going rotten, going sour. And again, I've had people who've come to me and they've been using coconut oil and they think it's just fine. However, 100% of the time, when they have transitioned and tried one of these Pure Romance lubricants, they've been converted because the sensation, the smell, the feel, the everything. And let me just mention, while I'm talking about things being clean and natural, the Pure Romance products are not totally natural. However, Patty Brisbane, who is the founder of the Patty Brisbane Foundation and Pure Romance, she's very mindful of ingredients, and her number one focus is women who have gone through cancer. Cancer treatments take a major toll on women's sexuality and the way things work and the way things feel. And so you can rest assured when something has been produced by Pure Romance, that even if the ingredients cannot be claimed 100% natural, they are 100% intentional, and things are going to be safe for the areas that they've been created for. Keep that in mind. There are really good lubricants available with ingredients that are going to be totally safe and keep your body happy.
That's so important to consider, because it is like you're putting this inside your body and your vagina is going to absorb it and it's going to be there. And so I love just thinking about like, what am I comfortable with putting in my vagina? And everyone gets to make that call, which I love, but I love learning some options and some things to think about. Also thinking about lube, I feel like intercourse can already be kind of messy. And that's something a lot of women have said, like, no one talked about how messy it can be. Thinking about using extra lubricant, what would you have to say about the cleanup after sex? Is it more with lubricant?
Again, every body is different. And some bodies already naturally produce more than others. And so it's going to be situational. But I will tell you this, and I've learned this from my own experience, because before I met the Pure Romance lubricants, I had tried many others. And it's not to say that Pure Romance is the only option. There are lots of good options on the market. But KY jelly, like I mentioned, squishy, you mentioned sticky. Usually, because of the way that it absorbs, they feel like they need more and more and more. But in my experience, using a good quality lubricant, less is more. So the lubricants I've discussed actually come with pump tops rather than being a squeeze tube. If you're using the proper lubricant for your body and for your activity, one pump should be all you need, which definitely keeps things from getting too messy, too squishy. You know, you apply it and then you've got a handful and you have to like wipe it on the bed. That is not necessary. That should not be happening. A little tip that I love to give, which is kind of eye-opening to women. I don't know where, but along the way, I think a lot of us perceived we needed to apply the lubricant to his penis before he enters. Therefore, women are usually similar to lotion. It's like we feel like we have to apply and cover every piece of it, which is what leaves us with that handful. And then we have to wipe it on a towel or somewhere elsewhere. I love to recommend to women, just apply the lubricant at the entrance to your vagina. And if you're using one of these good lubricants, all it takes is one pump. Then upon penetration, when they enter, it's just going to surround the penis as it enters, almost like a glove. And it's going to be just enough that as you give a little bit of friction, it's going to distribute and become very comfortable. So it shouldn't even have to be on hands to apply it. You're going to inevitably use too much if you're trying to cover all of him. If you're using a good lubricant, always less is more. And it should be just enough that it creates the glide, but you still get the skin to skin. You still get the experience. Because when things get too squishy and messy, it takes away. You know, we've all been there. So I can't necessarily claim it's going to make cleanup easier, but I can guarantee if you're using a good quality lubricant, it shouldn't make the cleanup worse, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Which I have found with the one you sent me
just like me.
the
Mhm.
water-based lube. And yeah, just like one finger, I put it on there and put it at the entrance of my vagina. And it was so crazy because after I was like, wait, my hand's not even
Yeah,
sticky. Like, this
there's nothing
is
there.
amazing. And yes, which was awesome because I have definitely used lubes in the past where it was like, yeah, that whole
Ugh,
hand of like,
ugh.
where do I put
And no
this?
wonder, because where that is the norm, people think that's what the experience with lube is. And that's another reason people hate lube, because the only lube they've experienced is
Yeah.
KY jelly or one of these other squishy, messy ones.
And putting it all over the penis and the vulva and like just
Uh-huh.
everywhere.
And then when you're finished, if you sneeze, it's like you birthed a jellyfish. Like, where does that come from? You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be that way. So, yes, it can make the whole experience much more clean and enjoyable.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Just before we close up, I'd love if you could just share a couple of thoughts for women who might be interested after listening to this to try lube or to try finding a lube. What are some things that you could kind of summarize for us to get started?
You need to know your body. That's the biggest thing. I think as women, when we have these questions, when we see something we're interested in, we hear something we want to try, we tend to go to someone we trust. And it might be a friend or a sister, sometimes maybe even our mom. We go to these other women in our life and it's like we need to run it by them. We need to hear what they think. And when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to things that involve your body, you need to trust yourself. If anything like this sounds like it's what you've been looking for, like it could help you, like it could be just what you've been needing, don't ask anybody else. Tune into your own body, because they might give you amazing advice, but their advice is based on their body, based on their experience, based on their ability to lubricate, based on, see what I'm saying? Like, there are so many variables. So the biggest thing I would say is trust yourself, know your body. How do things feel? What will you need? Because you could have an identical twin sister and your vaginas are not identical. So know what you need. Open your mind to what the possibilities are. That would be the other big thing that I would say. Don't underestimate your brain. When I educate women about these things and I talk about orgasm and, you know, ultimately the things that our bodies have been built to experience, we are more complex, but we have things that men don't have, and they are gifts to us. And the question I get is, why is their experience so much better then? Why isn't mine as big as theirs? And I know from experience personally and through other people that it's our brain. It's everything that our mind is thinking.
Yep. And our socialization.
That has written a story for us of what sex is, what it's supposed to be, what it shouldn't be, what we shouldn't try.
Mm-hmm. And all the things we don't know about our genitalia because of that.
Oh man, that's a whole different podcast. So just opening your mind, talking with your partner to define and rewrite what you want that story to look like for you and being open to it. But as lubricant is considered specifically, don't underestimate the way your brain is caching every experience, because every time it's uncomfortable, every time it doesn't smell desirable, every time it's messy or inconvenient or any of those things, your brain is making a little tick mark. And over time, because we're wired to protect ourselves, our brain is wired to keep us safe, to keep us happy. And over time, every time that tick marks against intimacy, against intercourse, outer course, whatever sex looks like for you, your brain is like, see, I told you it doesn't feel good. See, I told you it's annoying to clean up. See, I told you it stinks. And it will turn your libido completely off. And what drives me most is helping relationships have this intimate bond, because if it's not enjoyable, if it's not understood, if it's not comfortable, any of those things, it's withholding a bond that you can only get through this form of love. And so lubricant, something as simple as a $40 investment, can help in rewriting that story. And nothing gives me more thrill than watching that happen for women, especially in conservative communities. So open your mind to the possibilities and be willing to try things, just like you do with anything else in life. Trying new things opens doors to new possibilities.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dani. Where can we find you?
I am a representative of the Pure Romance company. Any of these products you're interested in, I have a website that you can visit. It would just be pureromance.com/Dani Todd, DANITODD. If you go there, you can actually click my name and then click view profile. And if you have questions, you can contact me by email, or it actually does have my business number there. You're welcome to reach out. I am not very social media heavy with what I do. Most of what I do is word of mouth. And that's what I prefer, is the direct contact with people. And so if you need further help or you have further questions, go ahead and just find me there at my website and let's chat. I'd love to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
You're so welcome.
I definitely learned a lot from this episode, and I hope that you feel the same. I hope that as we're moving forward, learning that lubricant now will be a space where maybe we give a little more thought. I know that's something I needed. I just didn't even think about what type I was really getting. I'd maybe look for certain things, but I just had no idea where to get it or what was good because I just had never been taught. So I hope that this episode gave you some good things to consider and think about as you're choosing a lubricant to use. I'm so excited to keep learning with you all, and I'm really excited for this sex seminar coming up. Make sure and check out all the links in the show notes about where to get tickets, how to access it, and I've also linked all of Dani's website and links as well to find the lubricant she talked about and all the other lubricants that she offers. As always, thanks for talking love. Thank you to all of you who listen and join me on this journey, and to our Ladies Talking Love team who make the podcast possible. Thanks to our sound wizard, Kimberly Demers, our newsletter guru, Lauren Barton, and our miscellaneous task whiz, Jana Norman. As always, thanks for talking love.